if you look at it from my perspective, talking about playing after Mike. There's a video up on YouTube, which is, I think, it's Brecker Brothers at the Bottom Line in Japan, if you want to look it up. And somehow, I'd always make fun of the fact that we're going to play Skunk Funk as fast as is humanly possible. And I don't know who counted it off that night. Somebody counted it off really as fast. I was faster than I could play it. And Mike just killed his solo. And if you zero in on me, you can just see absolute fear develop in my eyes, knowing that I had to follow this. So, and I somehow did. But that was quite a common occurrence in my development. Was trying, as the other guys mentioned, trying to follow him some of his solos. had a great time together. We were meant to be next to each other's side, and we miss him very much. I'm just grateful that I can listen to him and see him perform on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. You imagine he missed all that. I remember calling him up shortly before he passed away and telling him about YouTube. He hadn't heard of it before, so I thought he'd really enjoy it. So look how much things have changed now.
Yeah, it's a different world. But going back when you were teenagers in a Philadelphia suburb, who first picked up an instrument? Was it you on the trumpet and then Mike later on the sax? How was that process?
Well, we had music all through the house. My father was a wonderful pianist, singer, and arranger, composer. Really talented. He actually played on one of my records called "Into the Sun." I worked a tune that he wrote when I was 2 weeks old for me, called "The Hottest Man in Town," where he forecast that I'm going to play horn and maybe a hot fife and love music even more than my wife. That's some of the words. I was 2 weeks old, so I was predestined, I think, to play. We both were. But I started, because he was a particular fan of the trumpet. Clifford Brown was alive in Philly and playing quite a bit, so that was the talk of the town. And he loved all Clifford records. He loved Miles. He knew Miles a little, knew Dizzy. So in third grade, in this suburban little school, they only had trumpets or clarinets really available for study. So I grabbed the trumpet when I was in third grade. And conversely, when Mike came up 3 years later, they still only had trumpets or clarinets. So he, as he put it, got stuck with the clarinet. He didn't want to play the same instrument as I did. But that developed into, I think he was in ninth grade. He had been studying all those years with a very good teacher, I might add. His name was Leon Lester from the Philadelphia Orchestra. But he never really enjoyed the clarinet, and he switched to alto when he fell in love with Cannonball. I think it was in 8th or ninth grade. And then I went off to college, so I'm not sure what happened after that, but I think in 10th grade he switched to tenor. And I hadn't heard him play, really, because I was off in New York and I had joined Horace Silver's band. I'll just tell the story really quickly. We happened to be in the same town together when Mike went to IU. He had a band with Randy Sankey called Mrs. Seaman's Sound Band, and they had some summer gigs in Chicago. And I was playing with Horace. So he organized a jam session one day. Billy Cobham came over, bent him up, and we went over to his rehearsal space with his band. And I hadn't heard him play for maybe 3 years because I had been away, and he just he was probably 19 years old, 18 or 19 years old, and our jaws dropped. That's all I can think. I mean, he developed much further, but the essential Michael Brecker was already there, kind of mixing, if I put it simplistically, Coltrane with King Curtis and Junior Walker. He both had all those things in his playing at that age, and I'll never forget the looks on Benny's and Billy's face. And he moved to New York maybe within that year. I think he moved to New York when he was 19 or 20, and things went on from there.
Now, didn't your father have relationships with musicians who visited the house when you were a kid?
Well, there were some. John Hendricks was over once, and I don't think Mike was playing it. I was really young, maybe 11 or 12, and I sat in at they had jam sessions at the house on Sundays, and I played. I forget the tune. I can hear the tune. I just can't remember what tune he was singing. But Dad had just bought his first tape recorder, and I heard myself back for the first time. And I actually, for a second anyway, sounded pretty good when I played a phrase. All the cats laughed because they thought it was so cute. And imagine this: I saw John Hendricks probably about 10 years ago when he was appearing at the Blue Note with Moody, and he asked about that tape. You know, he said, "What happened to that tape? You were a little kid." And I said, "Oh man, I don't know where it is." And he said, "Well, that was history. You should go find it." So like Amanda, I had a great upbringing with cats coming over, local cats coming over. Like I said, my father knew Dizzy and had something to do with the original music in around in the tents. You know, like in Westbury, there's still a tent. In Philly, there were 3 local tents, Valley Forge, I forget the other 2, where they presented jazz concerts on Mondays. And he had some kind of connection with the guys who started that, and maybe invested in it or something. So he knew a lot of the famous cats. So whenever we went to see somebody, they'd always acknowledge that they knew him. I was all very proud that he knew, like Miles and Dizzy and et cetera, et cetera. So I was drawn in by that too.